All right, welcome back everyone to Matt Money. Today we're actually sitting here with the founder of a plant food company that is rather new and exciting, and I'm curious to see how he can describe it and how it differentiates from all the other plant-based companies that are coming out into the market right now. And his name's Sean Dellinger. Welcome, Sean, and I appreciate you hopping on the channel today and allowing me to interview you. Is there anything you want to
Appreciate
specifically
it.
talk about before we kind of get started? I guess to start with, introducing yourself, and then we can hop into more about talking about PlantX.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in e-commerce for 20 plus years, building out specialty platforms. So that's the only thing that I've seen overcome the likes of Amazon, for example, from Zappos back in the day, specializing in shoe and basing really around customer service, to then companies like The Honest Company, diapers.com, most recently Chewy.com,
Yeah.
where Ryan Cohn actually, him and I founded 3.coms together a little while back. And at Chewy.com, they sold the biggest e-commerce sale of all time at $3 billion. They're currently worth over $30 billion. And again, 6 years ago, Matt, if I told you that Chewy.com would start out of nowhere and they would take 51% of market share from a competitive industry like the pet industry, you'd say there's no chance. And
Right.
here we are now in the plant-based space, which I think is one of the hottest spaces at the moment. And I feel that we're the leader in that specialty e-com platform that I've known so well. And my previous company before this one hit a record of $1.3 billion from a company that I founded from my garage within a year and a half.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that was one of the first things that I noticed that differentiates you from the other 4 or 5 other companies out there, is that you guys are going direct to consumer. So you're not trying to get into I guess the supermarkets like a Beyond Meat or anything like that. You guys are going direct to consumer, but you're not necessarily just a food company, are you? You're kind of looking at other things to do with plants as well. So do you want to touch a little bit on that, and then we can get maybe into some more of the numbers?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're everything plant that you could think of, right? From actual physical plants for the house. Believe it or not, pre-COVID, they were selling really well. But post-COVID, you can't even keep them in stock. And
Right.
we actually acquired the leading plant-based subscription company in the UK that actually send plants to people's homes. And now we'll expand that throughout Europe, and they're already in the UK, and they're doing phenomenal. But like you said a little bit earlier, we are that business to consumer, right? Like, we're not just a specific brand building out a brand and then competing against other brands. We want all the brands to come to us. We see everybody as our partner. And what we want to do is educate at the end of the day, educate the consumer so then they become part of our community. And then we introduce all of these exciting products to our consumers.
Okay, that was going to be one of my questions, because I know that you guys are doing the packaged food delivery, direct to door, and everything like that. And my question was going to be, are you willing to partner with a Beyond Meat to be able to introduce some of those options within the products that you guys are going direct to door for?
Yeah, 100%. And we do it differently than other people. Like, we don't have our own kitchen. We don't have our own chefs. We don't have all that overhead. We've teamed up with a company called Up Meals in Vancouver, BC, and they're the ones who have all the infrastructure already for hundreds of clients. So for us, we then team up with different chefs from around the world, and the US, Canada, and have all these different unique histories behind themselves, right? And then they help curate a recipe for our consumers. So if we sell 100 meals or we sell 10,000 meals, our margin is the same across the board. And that's what allows our investors, shareholders, to have comfort that, just because there might be a slow week, that it impacts, the bottom line.
Yeah, and those margins were anywhere between like 35 to 55%, right?
Yeah, you've hit it bang on. So, for example, the meal delivery is that 35% gross margin, while the home plant subscription model is actually a 55% gross margin.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, those are definitely pretty. And that's once all the operating expenditures and everything are taking out. That's like net margin. That's not
No,
operating margin?
net in e-com. If you run, that's the thing. People always see, oh, wow, this company did $1 billion, but how did they lose money?
Mm-hmm.
It is such a difficult business to make money in. It's really, really hard. So if you do things absolutely perfect, you're lucky to have 8% to the bottom line. That's what we kind of aim for at the end of the day.
Okay, but even still, operating margin of 35 to 55 is phenomenal. You can't really go too much further up from there. So that's definitely a good starting point. And one of the things I definitely want to talk about is was specifically small businesses in this sort of macroeconomic environment during a pandemic. I mean, I'm just curious on how you've kind of seen it. One being just, I guess, a small business owner and an entrepreneur on your own. And then two, has that definitely been leveraged by the fact that you're in an e-commerce business, allowing you to capitalize that everyone is at home, everyone is in front of a computer screen maybe, to be able to kind of alleviate some of that small business pressures that some of the other businesses in the world are experiencing right now?
Yeah, listen, I know people are definitely struggling during these times, but one thing that's like mind-blowing to me, like even the other day I was in Vancouver, BC 2 days ago, and I went into the mall over there. And you would think that there was a fire sale with the amount of lineups in all these places and how busy it was. And it made me realize how strong our world is, or I don't want to say world, I'll speak for North America for now, because I've been doing a lot of traveling between the US and Canada, really building this business, even with COVID taking place. Like today, I'm in Miami looking at a couple business opportunities for our company here. But how everybody's kind of pivoted and shifted and adapted to the technology. We're lucky that COVID hit in 2020 and maybe not 15 years ago, where people weren't used to technology, jumping on, streaming like this, having fulfillment centers with structure in place. It's funny how these things happen at times when the world could adapt. Mm-hmm. And what I've seen is people being able to pivot and adjust. And I just think it's incredible. And it speaks for mankind as a whole, how people could evolve so quickly and actually profit off of something taking place, and realizing that more money is being circulated by the government, which then influxes, which then causes more revenue to be generated for people to spend. So far, I think it's quite impressive. We'll see obviously what the future holds, with the impact of everything. But for now, I think it's quite mind-blowing.
And was that the kind of foundation of the organization, seeing some of that technology? And of course, not the pandemic being part of it or the stimulus coming from the governments, but more of the fulfillment centers and being able to kind of transition and take advantage of that e-commerce play with a niche like this. Was that kind of the foundational piece of the company? And then second part to that question is, can you share the vision of the company and the real purpose of the company? Because I think we touched on it a bit, but I want to make it kind of really crunchy so that folks can kind of understand what exactly your goals are.
Absolutely. So, going back a few years ago, I started this whole idea of not housing inventory. For example, if a place 50 miles from me has all the same inventory as myself, what's the point of restocking that inventory? Why not team up with them, give them a little bit of extra margin, and then they act as our fulfillment partner. So, a few years ago, I started of this year is when I came up with this concept of PlantX. And the way that it happened was, I have this 20 years of e-com experience. My last company, ended up being extremely successful as far as revenue growth went and all of that. And, I was at a point where I really wanted to give back, and then I started looking at charities, forming an organization. But what happens is you only touch certain people, right? Like you don't touch the masses. Mm-hmm. And for myself, it's been a 10-year plus journey of improving my wellness of life, becoming healthier. Believe it or not, I've lost 60 pounds. And losing 60 pounds when you're at 220 is about 30% of your body weight. It's massive, right? And, I'm 40 years old now. I haven't weighed what I do now since I've been 13 years old, and I can't tell you how much better it's made me feel. And I loved food more than anyone. Like you can't even imagine, like the thought of a steak and this and that. And I always felt when I was trying to make improvements in my life, I was constantly being judged. Like I might have wanted to try plant-based living, but then someone's like, oh, so you don't eat chicken. Oh, you don't eat fish. And I'm like, I kind of started feeling bad because maybe a few days earlier, I was out with friends and I did want to have a piece of chicken. So the whole idea behind the movement of PlantX is if we could give people a longer, healthier, and better quality of life on the planet, and it's already happened, believe it or not, where I've already started receiving these calls. It's so rewarding for a company who just started in April. That's one thing. But number two, we want everybody to feel welcomed. That's why we refer to us as plant-based instead of using the word vegan, because vegan's been around for a long time and people stereotype it. We want to be known as this reform movement, not this orthodox movement. So, hey, if you just want to try out one meal a week, and if you're like, hey, I can't get full from plant-based eating, or I'm not satisfied, I promise you, hang out with us for a little bit, try it out, and you will be blown away. It could be some of the best food that people have ever tasted due to the flavors that are coming out.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely something that I've kind of noticed is definitely something I guess I've stereotyped by basically just not even trying, and I've tried a little bit in the past, with specifically with Beyond Meat, because that's available to me in the stores. And I mean, you kind of hit it nail on the head. I mean, granted, you might not necessarily be pushing the I guess plant-based meat on folks, but maybe more just the plant-based meals as a whole. But I've had also just plant-based meals with specifically for pastas and a bunch of other different things, and it's actually very tasty, and I can understand why folks can get behind it, and especially if their diet and their body reacts well to that sort of diet. I mean, I can understand why folks would continue to go down that path and subscribe to something that you guys have there.
And so many people think they're under this myth that you can't get the proper energy from the food. I'm in the gym lifting heavy weights 3 or 4 times a week. And on top of that, I cycle 60 miles, 70 miles a week on top of that.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And here I am, still great energy. And I just came off a red eye and been traveling for 15 hours. And before I left, I biked 12 hours, 12 miles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, it's all, I think there's this whole change coming, and not only the consumers realize it, but the investment world sees it. Like you pointed out a little earlier on Very Good Butcher, and we've seen Beyond have this incredible run, and just this whole mentality since COVID has hit that we just all need to, be more aware.
And then you kind of want to transition perfectly into the question I kind of wanted to bring up next is you have some of these other companies that are either trading on the over-the-counter markets, or in the case of Beyond, on the public markets, on the New York Stock Exchange. And their, I guess, market capitalization compared to their run rate is pretty good. But it seems like your company, in the same run rate to market cap sort of evaluation, is extremely undervalued in comparison. Do you want to touch on that a good bit and maybe provide some of the numbers behind that?
Yeah, so I can't disagree with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's a very good point. And after this raise, like when I invest in small cap companies or companies coming out of the gate, one management team, we have that proven 100%. Record. Our CEO came over from BMW corporate. Our CMO, extremely talented. She could work at any company she wants in North America. And then we have Lorne, our CFO, who started his own company in Toronto, 20-person plus staff. That's the management team. And then two, the concept, do they have revenue? Backed on that, we have that $30 million deal out of San Diego, and we acquired the plant subscription company out of the UK that has well over $5 million to $8 million of revenue and run rate currently, hopefully next year, $20 million. And then we just closed on a restaurant, but not just a restaurant, it's this unbelievable 15,000 square foot outdoor flagship location out of Squamish, BC, which I don't think you could have a better fit for plant-based living out of the mountains. You know what I mean? Like you see this space and you feel what we're after. You combine all of that, you're looking at about a $50 to $75 million revenue company next year. That's, if you take every small cap company in Canada in the plant-based space right now, or at least those three, Modern Meat, the Very Good Butcher, as well as Baby, it starts adding up just to that, right? And you've hit it bang on. Our market cap is lower than all of theirs. I can't comment really on why that is. I'm not sure, but maybe it's because people haven't heard our story yet. Maybe they haven't been exposed to what we're truly doing and seeing that growth, that explosive growth, because we could acquire almost any idea you could think of, right? Like from literally, let's say if there's another fantastic plant subscription model here in the US and then integrate them into our model, all these verticals become part of our growth story. So from grocery to meal to plants to pet food, we're selling plant-based pet food, which has absolutely exploded, all these different things. So really here, the possibilities are truly endless.
And because you are more of an e-commerce play rather than, I guess, directly creating all these, I guess, plant-based meals on your own, and you're partnering with other folks, you're kind of limitless in terms of how quickly you can grow. Or am I wrong on that kind of question?
No, I think you've hit it bang on, 100%. You're understanding. And the thing is, you are so educated on the investment side of things. So when I have discussions like this with people like yourself, that they understand how big this concept is, right?
Right.
And one of the main reasons why it was so important to me to find these really cool flagship locations is so that, a lot of investors say, oh, they're just an e-commerce company. Where's the value? That's a lot of the mentality sometimes, because there's only been a handful of extremely successful .coms, if you think about it, right, over time. So right away, so now, if you doubt us for any reason, come into one of our centers. One's opening up in Hillcrest, San Diego. We've got one in like I said, Squamish, BC. Couple more to come, which you'll eventually hear. And all of a sudden, these exciting movements happen. And when people come, and I could tell you I was even in Squamish just yesterday, and the energy there, people get what we're doing, people get what we're after, and I just know that we are the platform for plant-based living.
And so I guess what's the end goal, I guess, for you? Is it to eventually, I guess, be acquired by a different organization, or is it to kind of really fulfill the prophecy to eventually get listed on the NASDAQ or in 4 or 5 years when you become big enough to do so? I mean, or can you even talk about that, I guess, if that's already in the pipe works?
Yeah, so we can't really speak on that because none of it's been disclosed. So we can't discuss those things. But, for myself, 20 years of running extremely successful businesses. Our CEO, Julia Frank, she's absolutely fantastic. She's really working hard with Bill currently building up that whole grocery piece, which that market is literally the largest market in the world, right? Everybody needs to eat on. But I don't think it'd be fair, and we have a board, obviously, and officers. So this is just my opinion speaking here. When you say to me, because I don't want to speak on behalf of the company as a whole.
Right.
For myself, what I'd love to see is, I think the company, for shareholders and investors, they always got to be looking at the company at their best interests. It can't be what does Sean Dollinger want. Right? It's got to be what is the best to maximize everybody's returns at the end of the day. So I'd say if that acquisition happens to be a powerhouse of a company that could then just accelerate to the next level, and think about it, there's tons of there's Safeway, there's all these different grocery chains that how we could help. Whole Foods teamed up with Amazon, right? So that's kind of their piece. But, from Sobeys to I think Safeway might have bought Sobeys, but you know what I'm saying? There's endless chains of these grocery chains that would be perfect, because then we act as the education piece for them. And these companies could afford, a couple $1 billion acquisition. And with that type of backing behind us, not only would we have the online portion that we specialize in, but then they would have all these education centers. Because look, number one technology company in the world, Apple, $2 trillion market cap. They're still opening up endless stores. Why? to keep educating people on their new products. Plant-based living is brand new. Nobody knows about it. Lululemon did it for the fitness side of things. If they just started with an e-com, that probably wouldn't have done nearly as good as it did.
Right.
Educating people on why they're spending $80 on a Lululemon t-shirt to feel better in the gym, how it fits. It was important to get those showrooms. Right. For us, these learning centers, then franchising them out. So when you say we'll keep doing what we're doing, which I think we're doing an incredible job. We just went public in August, 2 acquisitions to the finish line. Non-brokered private placement, oversubscribed. We had over $25 million in the book. That's unheard of.
Right.
And we ended up taking $11.5 million. So we'll just keep building it out. But to answer your point, big company comes in, nothing would feel better than being acquired, in our first couple of years.
Right. And I guess the big question is, and I think you hit it right on the head, but I want to hear it directly, is you said, you want to partner with the right company. So it's not necessarily just being acquired, but for you, it's partnering with the right company that wants to take this to the next level. They might have the learning centers that they could open up in their individual stores, whether it's a Safeway or Kroger or somebody else. Exactly. You want to view it as they're just not going to come and buy you out. They're going to take the vision forward for the folks that are investing in the company. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Exactly. And then we would love to stay on as this great management team, founder of the company. I'd love to keep going with what I know so well and go. And the perfect example is Walmart, right? Walmart, one of the richest companies in the world, right? Super successful, kills it on the brick and mortar. But even with endless amounts of money in the bank, they couldn't conquer the e-com world just with Walmart.com. They went and paid a crazy valuation for Jet, right? Mm-hmm. Remember that? And everybody said they're crazy.
It was like 30 billion or something like that.
Something insane.
Exactly. Yeah.
But now everybody's like, that was a great purchase. So there's not too many people that have my e-com expertise. And if I was able to have that kind of inventory in the background, being able to then use our interface, it'd be absolutely mind-blowing what we would be able to do.
Right. No, 100%. And I guess, like you had mentioned kind of earlier, you kind of relate it to a Chewy or Zappos or something like that. I mean, it's very comparable in terms of what you could be able to do. And especially in this sort of exploding trend that we're kind of seeing that I feel like is only gaining more and more momentum as time goes on, as we've seen Very explode. We've seen Beyond Meat explode in terms of the year-over-year percentages, in terms of growth year-over-year. I mean, can you provide that? I mean, you touched a little bit about the amount of business you've been able to do this year, which is closing in on 30, if not more, $1 million, and you're touching on 55 to 70-ish million next year. I mean, in 5-10 years, does your team have an idea as to what and how big the revenue run rate could be for the organization?
Yeah, because we haven't come out and disclosed it. We've got to be really sensitive to that.
Understandable.
The reason why I speak openly about this $30 million number, if your viewership, there was a press release on it, a complete press release. Same thing, we acquired Bloombox UK. We bought them for 11 million pounds, I believe. We bought them for 8 million pounds, and I think it worked out to about $11 million on the conversion. There's a reason why we paid that based on forecasts, right? So that's why I speak really openly about those two items, as well as Squamish, BC. They're a profitable vertical, couple $1 million in revenue there. So, that I'll speak always openly about, but until we really start publishing our quarterlies, it's very difficult for me to get into. But again, just know that you have a phenomenal management team here with great verticals. We've already shown that we could announce and bring things through the finish line. I think that's really important. And even after everything's paid here, there's no debt on our books whatsoever. Right. And we have roughly $8 million net after everything's paid off here once, after the close on this raise.
That's awesome. So is there, going into 2021, is there any big products that you guys are planning on, I guess, moving into, or any further, I guess, areas you're looking to get into? You kind of mentioned Bloombox UK. Is there any sort of acquisitions or areas that you might be focusing on? I know you can't discuss or disclose like, oh, this particular company in Asia or Australia, but is there any particular areas that you're looking to focus in? Are you focusing on Asia? Are you focusing on Australia? Because I know Australia specifically is very big on plant-based meat as well, or sorry, plant-based food diets as well. So I'm just curious if you're focusing on specifically North America and the UK, or is there other areas you're looking to get into?
So all I could say is you're on the right path. And if you look at our press releases coming out over the next week as we formalize things, it'll start giving you color on the direction we're going. Obviously, it's no secret that we're looking to expand globally. And with Bloombox UK, it should set the tone that, hey, these guys have started an establishment in the UK. What could that possibly lead to, right? Mm-hmm. And then my background, I'm really good at taking a website in a country and then expanding it out. So if anybody knows my background, that's not a secret. Mm-hmm. When we look at Bloombox UK, the low-hanging fruit there is we now have a distribution center. And just so you know, the reason why we acquired them is because they follow our whole idea of not having inventory. So they teamed up with a farm in the Netherlands, and literally their sales are exploding here during Christmas and everything. But the farm is so used to shipping out products, it doesn't bear down on them, and they can keep focusing on what they're great at. But right. You know how the EU is, because Netherlands is part of the EU, we could literally expand into Germany, France, Spain, all overnight, and just need to hire one person to do the translation and answer phones. And that could increase revenue in each country by 5 to 10 million kind of right off the bat.
Right.
So instead of jumping into more, we've done 3 incredible acquisitions so far, or, you know, even though Hillcrest wasn't an acquisition, so I should make sure I specify that, but we announced that it's a big part of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. Let's really work on these things. Let's really get grocery going. Right now, we're only shipping non-perishable items besides the meal delivery side of things. Let's start introducing refrigerated items. Let's start refrigerating frozen items and think about that possibility there. So once we start creating a really great foundation, then what do we stack on next? What do we stack on next? You know, so I think we're growing at a phenomenal rate. I think anybody would be blown away that this company only was started in April of 2020, right? April 2020. And look where we're at already. And there's no slowdown in sight, right? So where we go.
All right. Well, I think I just have 2 further questions for you, and then we can get back to being busy and growing the businesses, right? Yeah. So quick question. You are somebody that has done plenty of businesses and started plenty of businesses and have been a serial entrepreneur. Knowing that about yourself, what is one piece of advice that you could give to your people that could see this interview and your team and also the folks on my channel?
Yeah, you know, just stick with the idea. Like, it's at the start, when you start something, it accelerates so quick, even if it's just getting business cards, a website going, getting a few phone calls. And I always find then it stalls just a little bit. You know, it just has that little bit of a moment where you really got to push through, keep your head down, and then get things going once again. And it's a lot easier to say, oh, you know what, let me just move on to the next idea. And I'll tell you, if I stuck with my delivery, I had a delivery driving company in Montreal. I was 19 years old, and we would pick up and deliver from anywhere before the smartphone, right? Mm-hmm. If you think about it today, that's Uber Eats.
Right.
That's DoorDash. That's all these different things. So I got to a point where, oh, how much bigger could I grow? I thought I hit a plateau. I was doing really well. I ended up selling the company, right? But it just showed you, if I really stuck with that one concept, how big could it have got? Because I originally believed in that idea. And I've seen that all along the way in every company that I've went into. So stick with it, keep working hard, and think about where you could bring it to get to that next level. So the best.
I've definitely experienced that, and me and Kyle, who's my business partner, and something else that we're kind of doing. It's a small e-commerce as well. We hit a hiccup with our payment provider, and they were like, well, you know, you can't utilize this. So we were like, well, I mean, first initial thought is, we just pack it up? I mean, we made some money, you know, we could pack it up. It's like, no, I mean, we're just starting something. It can continue to grow. You know, small hiccups like that on the road can be like, you know what, it's easy to kind of just walk away. The harder thing is to do, keep going and finding a way and a solution to keep growing and keep from stalling, like you kind of said. But that's a really good piece of advice. And the last one I want to finish on is, who is your role model, and who do you kind of look up to, either in business or on a personal level? Could it be an Elon? Could it be a Bill Gates? Just curious from your perspective, someone that's been a good serial entrepreneur like yourself, who keeps you going, and who do you admire as your role model?
Listen, the people you mentioned, they're all phenomenal, right? They've done incredible things for the earth and the planet and everything, right? Like bring innovation, technology. But if you look at all of them, they're all really hard workers, right? Like,
100%.
You ask any of them, they probably haven't taken a vacation in God knows how long, part of their life, right? And to be honest with you, all of them are. I don't just have one specific one, but if I look back, when I was a child growing up, it was my grandfather. My grandfather worked endless hours. And, I grew up in an interesting situation where I saw many different parts of life. I saw, very poor. I saw very wealthy. And it really opened my eyes to what I had to do to get to where I wanted to get. So, if I had to pick one person, it would be my grandfather, who got me to the point that I had to. And then the people that you've mentioned, like the Elon Musks, the Steve Jobs, the Bill Gates, and all these other people I find have helped shape me. And even this one person who, if you see sometimes from a speech perspective, like, I love being able to communicate. I think it's such a powerful item. And there's a person by the name of Cam Batley, who moved from Aurora, a company called Aurora, to simply just be engaged to go on the road to speak about the company. And even someone like that inspired me. And I'd love to go hear him speak, because the way he captured the attention of a room was incredible. So if I could take pieces from each of these people that I do look up to, and it doesn't always need to be famous people that everybody hears of, and shape that and mold that into something that I could become, I think that's truly what I want to look up and hopefully at the end of the day become.
No, I think that's a perfect answer. And I would consider myself almost the same. I can't really point to one specific. It's always about continuous improvement for yourself. And so one of the things I got, one of the most valuable pieces of advice I ever got was in 2012. I was doing an internship for the company I work for now. And my team leader at the time said, Matt, one of the things I could advise you, and one of the pieces that they had gotten, was listen to everybody about either one particular topic or a bunch of different things like you had kind of mentioned. Internalize it, think about it, and then formulate your own opinion as to what that was. And it might have been for specifically one piece of technical, piece of business that you're working on. But I think that holds true even to what you're kind of talking about as well. How articulate somebody is, how they present themselves, how they communicate, how they present, versus how they innovate, how hard they work, how they approach a meeting, how they approach, calling somebody to engage in a piece of business. Internalize that and say, does that work for me? Do I think that I want to do something like that? Or I don't like how they do it, but if I tweak it in a certain way, I think that that's something that I want to be doing. And really just doing it to do continuous improvement on yourself and get to the best person that you think you can be and the most potential that you can have in reaching that potential. So that hits home for me.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And it even comes to a plant-based lifestyle as well, believe it or not. Like some people say, oh, you got to be gluten-free. I am gluten-free, but when you start looking at some of the gluten-free products, they're not healthy for you. Or some people think because they live a plant-based lifestyle, but they eat raw sugar and go out. And so all these things, even from what we're telling you, take it, look at it for yourself, see if it makes sense, and judge for yourself. Don't just listen to one person out there,
Right.
So it's exactly what you just said, and what I said earlier. We got one shot. Let's do the best we can, let's keep improving ourselves.
Absolutely. I think that's a phenomenal start. And Sean, phenomenal place to stop. And Sean, I think that's a great interview, and I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy. I know you've been traveling all day, and hopefully you get some good some rest after a long day of travel. And I'll talk to you soon, hopefully.
Hey, thanks, Matt. And from the PlantX team, stay curious, stay planted, stay healthy.
All right, thanks, Sean. I appreciate that.